Rising was like the opposite of political. It was just basically like, here's your Rising gear. We train here. Like, here's the technical plan. Like, go do your thing.
Yeah.
Now, that's good and it's bad, because the good thing is you're not getting like a bunch of like evil eyes from like the owners or like the directors. Like, everyone's there and they're like super chill. The bad thing is if you overachieve, there's no like pat on the back. Like, here you go, you're getting a promotion, you're going to the next level up. Like, at a certain point, like my 09s were like one of the most successful teams on a state league level.
Yeah.
And we were basically like beating the ECNL team. Like, we beat them, we like crushed them. Like, and that's the team that's supposed to be above. And there was no like, hey, let me get your players. Like, there was no like, hey, it was already like, no, this team is set.
Yeah.
Your team is that team, and that's that. So it was like super, I don't know. It just felt like, man, you at least need to acknowledge the players that are outperforming the teams above them, so that we can have some sort of upward mobility.
Yeah.
Now, on next level, but also I will say this, there's no expectation to win. If you lose every game that season, which a lot of Rising teams do lose every game the entire season, nobody's going to fire you.
Really?
Yeah. Like, you're good.
Yeah.
Nobody
so
cares.
No matter what,
nobody cares. You might get some pissed off parents, but like the management is not going to be like mad at you.
Right.
At next level, it's like it's Real Madrid, at least with my team.
So let me ask you a question, right? You were at both, obviously, Rising and next level. Do you think that's good that there was no like pressure to win games?
Yeah, of course. It's way better. It's better for development. Right. They're too young.
Yeah.
Like, they're kids at that age should not be expected to get results and win. I think you should be focusing on development, because winning doesn't mean you're developing.
I agree 100%. That's why I'm asking you. Like, you know what I mean? That's why I like these combos, because there's no right or wrong answer, right? But like, it's cool to hear other parts of what people think, you know what I mean, and how they see the game in that aspect, which I agree. Like, winning isn't everything.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's some clubs and parents and all that stuff that they just think winning is the only thing. You know what I mean? And your kid's 11, 12 years old, which is cool. Like, don't get me wrong, you want to win.
Yeah.
Right? But the main thing is to develop.
Yeah.
You know? And they think that winning, oh, my son got the first place trophy, or my daughter, we won this tournament. Cool. But did they play good soccer? Or did they develop within those couple games? And people don't see it that way. Coaches don't see it that way too. That's why it's like,
no, dude, they look at it like, we're going to battle, I want to win everything. And I see that's why so many teams sandbag. Like, you see in Arizona especially, like, you'll see a lot of clubs, like mainly, you know, like the RSLs, you know, Rising doesn't do it that much. Next level, we would do it. I would do it, dude. I'm not going to lie. But I would, you know, you bring down like 3 or 4 of the players, 5 sometimes of the team above you.
Yeah.
And so let's just say I coached the first team and the second team. I would put my second team in the top bracket, bring 3 or 4 players down from the top team, and then just go crush teams that would have probably beat me without those players. Yeah. But you want the results, right? Yeah. Because if you get the results, number one, like, the management's happy because you're going to retain those players, because everybody knows that, like, if you have a losing season, the biggest fear is that, like, you're going to lose your players.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
So, like, you got to have some, like, it's not all about results, but you have to have some results in grassroots. Yeah. If you're in an academy, the only risk you have is losing your players to another academy. So, like, if you're Rising MLS or RSL MLS, for instance, if it's, like, depends on who's better that season, because if, like, RSL is better that season, then the Rising MLS players might go to RSL MLS or vice versa. But you're not going to lose them to, like, Phoenix Premier. No offense, great, it's a great club, like, but it's a grassroots club. It's not an academy.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, different levels to it.
There's just different levels.
Yeah,
for sure. It's like if you're in LA, if Galaxy has if LAFC has a better season than LA Galaxy, I don't think that LA Galaxy players are going to go to LAFC. I just think that, like, those are both two such good academies, and it's going to ebb and flow. And you're getting supported so much by, like, these really, really dedicated, educated, prepared coaching staffs, and you have such an amazing environment that like you're not going to leave if you lose a few games. Nobody cares. No. We beat my U13 team. We beat LA Galaxy twice in a row.
Really?
Yeah, those LA Galaxy players weren't like, hey, dude, I'm going to leave LA Galaxy to come to next level. Nobody thought that.
Yeah.
You know, because in the long run, they're like, you know, I was looking at the stats the other day. The long run, if you stay at that academy all the way through to U18, your chance of signing a pro contract at any level is like 30%.
Right.
That's not the same at a grassroots club.
No, it's not, which is crazy.
Like, I'm interested in your experience was you played grassroots and then you played New York Red Bull Academy.
Yep.
What age did you join the Red Bull Academy?
So I played club until I was like probably 13, 14 years old. And then I got scouted by the New York Red Bulls. They invited me out to, it was like a week preseason, you know, right before the season would get going. And I think it was after the second day, they told me like, hey, we want to sign you. So probably from the age of 14 until I was 21, I was with the New York Red Bulls, which is crazy. But I joined the academy when I was 14.
Wow. And what position were you playing when they scouted you?
Forward, but I didn't always play forward. I was a center back before and then turned into center defensive mid and then kind of just worked my way up playing forward. So I got switched when I was like 13, which is kind of like late to switch, I guess, if you look at it. But I was a center back and then they put me center forward. And within like 5 months, I got invited to go play with the U.S. national team as a forward. Yeah,
wow.
It was pretty cool.
That's nuts.
But, so I wasn't always a striker. Which I think is, like, important for players nowadays. Like, it's going off conversation, right? But, like, I have talked to some parents who are like, oh, my kid only has to play winger. My kid only wants to play, you know, the 10. In my head, and, again, you've been in soccer long enough, right? Like, I think it's incredibly important to play two different positions, right? Like, I don't know if you think otherwise, but like the coaches nowadays, like you're going to take a player that can play right wing and right back instead of a player that can only play right wing. You know what I mean? So that's the way I look at it. I don't know the way.
No, it does. I think there's certain skills, and weirdly, center back and striker are so similar.
They are. And people don't realize it.
Dude, it's so similar. Dude, there's some strikers where I'm like, that dude is like 5% away from being a center back. Yeah. Like 5% away from, I guess, the skills of like finishing and stuff like that. Like I always said that Van Dijk would be like top goal scorer in the championship 100%. If he played striker like in the lower league. Yeah. But at that top level, he's a center back, and he's like one of the best. But he's got all of the. You look at him like he could easily be like a hold up striker, finisher, poacher in the box. Yeah. It's interesting, but I think you're right. Like right wing, right back, very similar.
Yeah.
You should be able to play both. Mm-hmm. If you're a center midfielder, 6'8", 10.
Yeah, anywhere in the midfield.
Anywhere in the midfield, dude, 100%. Also false 9.
Yeah.
Like I think that false 9 nowadays like is a position that is being used more and more because people are realizing how rare it is to have an all-out striker that can like run the channels.
Yeah.
So they're like, we don't have that. Let's just have them drop in and use the wings to attack or use the 10 and 9 to like kind of switch back and forth.
Yeah.
And I've done that a lot and it really, really works. It's a great strategy. But I think that you're right. Like center backs, like you should be, dude, some of the center back 6 too. I think if you're a center back, you should be able to play 6.
Yeah, 100%.
Just push forward a little bit into that.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree.
So yeah, you're right. Like, you're 13, New York Red Bulls pick you up, you're playing striker. And then what club did you play for before that?
I was with New York Soccer Club beforehand, local club in Westchester, New York. Claudio Reyna was actually my head coach for a little bit. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it was a well-known, like it was an up-and-coming club, but that's all it was, though. You know what I mean? It was just the club level, and there was no academy. And back in the day, there was the DA, right? The developmental academy, which was the New York Red Bulls. On the East Coast, at least, it was DC United. You know, all those MLS teams.
Right.
And that's where you wanted to be at if you're a good player. Right. So, lucky enough to get the call up to the Red Bulls when I was that young, and then just played with them ever since.
Right.
So
So as you're going through, you played striker all the way through the academy.
Yeah.
And then at that time, was there like those MLS Next Fests and all that kind of stuff?
No, I mean, it wasn't MLS Next per se. It was just the Academy Invitationals, and it would be in Florida. It would be like every winter or something like that. So we would do those. Again, only MLS academies would get called in. And
right.
All
It wasn't
stuff.
like MLS Next clubs.
No.
It was just the academies.
Just the
And at that
academies.
time, how many was there? It was like 29, 30,
there
something
was
like that.
maybe 20 something
Yeah.
in there, and it was cool. Like you get to play RSL, you get to play FC Dallas,
Right.
you know, you get to play all these.
Who were
top
like the top
academies.
dogs at that time?
So our age, when I was coming up in the academy, it was the Red Bulls and RSL
Yeah.
were like the top two.
RSL Utah, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, not RSL Arizona.
No.
Like the actual academy.
Yeah, like the actual RSL academy.
Yeah.
It was always us two, and then FC Dallas was always up there too. Dynamo was pretty good in the academies as well.
They've always been good, dude.
always.
And they're still great.
Really.
They're still amazing.
Yeah.
FC Dallas, in my opinion, is still, well, at the age group that I coached at, they were the cream of the crop.
Really.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it was just like, those would be like the top four. And I remember like when we were 15, 16, and we would play RSL, like we would have huge crowds. And at that age, it's still kind of crazy to have like hundreds of people watching you, and
Right.
huge crowds would come watch us play, because like technically it was like the best players in the country all on one field,
Right.
you know, competing, which was pretty sick.
Right. That is sick. I'm interested, like, for a lot of our audience is like 15, 16-year-old kids. So a lot of them are kind of like looking around, and even the parents of those kids that listen a lot, like they're all wondering, like, if you're at an academy at 15 or 16, like, are you thinking at that time college or pro? Like, what was your mindset, and are those academies helping you determine whether or not like college is the best path for you, or professional, or how did that work?
When I was younger, I mean, and I can almost probably think that if you're 15, 16 soccer player, your main goal is to go pro, right? Like that's what probably every soccer player thinks at that age, right? But you know, the real aspect of it is that like not everybody gets to go pro. It is an insanely tough thing to do. So the academies, at least in the Red Bulls, they did do a very good job of like, hey, listen, we have a ton of connects in the college like game. If you want some help, we can get you that help. So they were very like hands-on in terms of like, listen, if you're not ready to go pro yet, which 90% of the teams or players weren't, they would really help you and push you to go to a high-end D1 school and all that. You know, my first thought was, yeah, I want to go pro, right? I've always thought that since I had a young age. So that was my main goal. But, you know, I ended up going the college route first because, you know, I also think I wasn't ready to go pro at such a young age. So I think college helped me develop a little bit more.
Why do you think that? Like, what is, like, I guess let me reframe that. What are the qualities that determine whether or not you're going to go pro or college first? Is it like mental? Is it physical? Is it technical? Like, what is that, the thought process behind that?
I think it's all three, to be honest. You know what I mean? So I got thrown into the first team when I was 16.
The New York Red Bulls first team.
The New York Red Bulls first team. Wow. At 16, 17 years old. And, you know, at that point, Thierry Henry was there. Tim Cahill was there. Like, dude, these players that I grew up watching, you know, I got to train with them multiple times, and it was cool. But I came to a realization, like, wow, I still have to grow as a player to be at this level. You know what I mean? And played multiple games with them with the reserve. Back then it was the reserves, right? They had a reserve league. So I would play games in the reserves. And I knew I wasn't ready. Like, I was just like, you know, I always back myself in being a good player, right? As you should.
As you should.
But you also have to be realistic and be like, okay, I'm not here yet. You know what I mean? So I think going the college route, being able to develop not only as a player, but as like a person and become more mature, I think helped me a lot. So yeah, I just didn't think I was ready for it yet. Mentally, I was always very strong. And, you know, to be honest, if you're not mentally strong in this game, you will not make it anywhere.
Right.
And I think that, you know, people don't realize that. But if you're weak-minded in soccer, you're going to get kicked to the curb.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I was always mentally strong, but I knew, like, you have to be realistic with yourself. Like, yeah, I'm not ready yet.
Right.
You know what I mean? I still have to develop more. So, you know, I ended up going the college route, and, you know, I think that was, like, the best decision for me at the time. So.
And did New York Red Bull help facilitate that?
Yeah. Yeah, they did.
So what was that like? So when you played with that first team, 16, 17, okay, then let's just say you got to 18. 18 is the time where you either sign an under 21 contract or you go to college.
Yeah.
Can you can you sign that under 21 contract, but at that point you're a pro player?
Yeah.
So then how does that work going to college after that?
So back then, I don't know if I'm sure they still do it now. Before I went to college, I signed a contract that the Red Bulls had my I was a homegrown player, so they had my rights. So right after college, no matter where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do, they had the first say because they had my rights as a player. So I wasn't technically under a pro contract, but I was under contract with them in terms of like they kind of managed where I would go and what I could do. You know what I mean? So, and I think that was like a good route for me to do. I think that's why like I agreed to it because, you know, you always want to have a club that, you know, once you're out of college, you still have that option. You know what I mean? Instead of going out of college and you're just kind of like, okay, what do I do now?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So they had my homegrown rights from the age of 18 to where I was able to sign and then right after college.
Interesting. And they decided we're going to send you to college as almost like a developmental thing.
Yeah. So I had these conversations with multiple head coaches, the GM there, and they were like, listen, like this is the best route for you, but we still want, like we're still looking at you and all that stuff. So that's why they signed me to, you know, to have my rights.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So the academies use college as almost like a development.
Kind of. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so does college, like when you get to college, I'm guessing because, I mean, is college more of a developmental thing? Like, were you being developed in college, or was it like college was like put up or shut up, perform, or you're getting your job taken? Like, or were they looking at it as like, oh, we'll keep developing you as well?
Yeah. I think it was more like, you know, we'll keep you and develop you. I got lucky enough to go to a college where the head coach there, Cesar Markovic, he came through the Red Bull Academy as a coach. So I got lucky enough to be in an environment where he knew my situation and the type of player that I was coming from in terms of like the style we played, the way they used the number 9 and all that stuff. He knew all this. So he got the best out of me and he was able to develop me a little bit better than I think most other colleges would come from because he knew the structure at the New York Red Bulls. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was one of the main things why I chose.
That's brilliant.
College. Yeah.
So these guys, some of these college coaches are coming out of academy systems, and I'm guessing the directors of these academies hit them up and be like, "Hey, you're we have a guy that's going to fit your system perfectly, and then you can develop him, and then we can take him back when you're done."
Yeah.
Wow. So that's awesome. I'm wondering if like there's other academies that have similar connections.
I'm sure there are. Like, you know what I mean? Because, you know, a lot of these academy coaches end up going to coach college. And again, the soccer world is very small. So
dude.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's insanely small. So if you have a contact at a Division I school here that worked for your academy, of course, like you're going to try to push some of your kids to go there because it's all connected.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I got lucky enough, again, to go to a school where the coach knew like my goal and, you know, my style of play, the way I was playing the last 6 years. So he was able to tailor me and kind of develop me in that position. So when I get out of college, I was still like used to the Red Bull way and all that stuff. You know what I mean? So
that's awesome. So when you get out of college, and what was your biggest takeaway like coming out of college? What do you think developed the most while you were there that you didn't have before you were there?
In terms of like soccer or just
in terms of like just soccer and holistically, like.
I definitely think I became more of a man in college. You know what I mean? Because you don't have your parents, you don't have your brothers or sisters with you. You know, you have your teammates and you have college friends, but at the end of the day, you're kind of on your own to become like the person that you want to be. So I think within those 4 years, like I matured a lot within college, within like soccer wise. I don't know. It's kind of tough, right? Because college soccer is weird. Like, let's just put it like that. It's a very different style of play that you go from top level academies to college. It's a different style of play. A lot of college soccer, and you'll see it. It's a lot of kick and run, and you know you have a lot of athletes that are just athletic and just can run through players. Whereas, you know, you're at a top academy like you said, Dynamo, FC Dallas, New York Red Bulls. That's not the style. You know what I mean? That is far from it. So I think in terms of playing wise, I was able to develop to the college soccer way in terms of, yeah, if we need to play direct, you can play direct. But I was also the last 6 years groomed to play like a nice style of soccer. So I was able to adapt to 2 different ways, which I think at the end of the day helped me out a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the highest level of professional soccer, like that possession style, dude, that's like, if you're in the championship or League One, or, I mean, they're not playing like that. And the fans will get pissed if you play like that. They don't want to see that shit, you know? So they want to see, there's a lot of direct.
Yeah.
I think that people, I mean, you look at Inter Milan gets to the Champions League final, dude.
Exactly.
I mean, playing a 3-5-2 direct is so effective, and people like look down on it. And I'm always just like, man, that's just the wrong mentality.
Right.
Like that is a strategy, and it's a strategy that works really, really well. I mean, PSG uses it now too. I mean, you look, they're not just only building out the back.
No, it's crazy, like the way things have changed. Then
but
back in the day, like it was all like, and especially in college soccer, it's just direct. Center back gets it.
Right.
Boom,
Center back to striker.
Up the field.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I was able to adapt to both those ways, and it was that at the end of the day helped me out a lot in terms of soccer within learning what I did in college soccer.
Yeah, I'm guessing like as a striker, that probably helped you a lot with like your hold up play.
100%.
First touch out of the air.
Everything.
Like,
fighting for 50-50s.
Fighting for 50-50s.
You know, everything.
All that, which is, you're going to need that. Like,
oh, you do. If you don't have that as a 9, then,
you
know, probably think of changing positions at that point.
Right, 100%. Are you, so when you got out of college, how many years did you spend at college?
4.
So you spent 4 years in college, and after that you decided you're going to turn pro, or how did that work?
Yeah, so I was playing in the last like month or 2 of college. I was playing with a kind of like a summer league team up in Kingston, New York, and ended up tearing my ACL. So that was a big setback because, you know, obviously going out of college, I was getting interest from different teams and all that stuff, and whether it was in USL or then, you know, USL Championship, MLS, and tearing your ACL in probably the most important year of like your soccer career. That was pretty hard. You know what I mean? That was a big setback on me. So, you know, I had to, you know, do the surgery, you know, and then just grind it out for the next 7-8 months. And it was tough, dude.
That's wild, dude.
It was rough.
Yeah. And what were you doing when you tore it? Like what
movement?
But what movement?
Going down the line, and the crazy thing is there was maybe like 6 minutes left in the game. We're up to 0, you know what I mean? And taking a player, you know, one-on-one, and I cut inside, you know, and the kid hits me from behind or behind to the side-ish. My body goes one way, my knee stays stuck and goes the other.
Were you wearing cleats?
Yeah. And it was on turf.
It was on turf?
Yeah.
Huh.
So, yeah, that was pretty brutal, dude. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it because, you know, I felt pain, but it's a weird feeling. You know what I mean? Like you hear like a pop or whatever, but you don't think in the moment, oh, I tore my ACL.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I got up, I tried to stand up, and my knee kind of buckled, and I'm like, oh, okay, I did something pretty bad here.
Right.
So that was pretty tough. That's why I said, like, if you're not mentally strong within soccer, dude, the game's gonna kick you to the curb.
Yeah, bro, you're absolutely right. Like those, I mean, mentally, that movement that you've done 1,000 times, taking someone on, cutting inside. We've all gotten tackled 1,000 times. You've been there in that moment, and then like, why that one time? Mm-hmm. It's like tough to cope, and then all of a sudden you're on a totally different journey, dude.
Yeah,
totally different journey.
You know, at that point, I thought I was like, I might be done.
Right. Everybody thinks
crazy.
that. I'm sure everybody
it's crazy to
that.
think that. Like I was only 21, and like to think I've worked my butt off the last, you know, 13 years of my life for one injury to just call it quits. It was just like, damn, like this sucks. But you got to be mentally strong, and I was just like, nah, like I still got it.
Right.
You know
Did you feel sorry for yourself in any moments? Like that first day?
Yeah. yeah. I think if I said no, I'd be lying to myself. Like, and it was more than a day. It was probably like a couple weeks. I would start to feel sorry for myself, but you know, I was lucky enough to have like a good like backbone in terms of like my family was always like motivating me to like, hey, it's fine, like you got it. You know what I mean? Like we'll be here for you. We'll help you out through the recovery and all that. So I think that was a big part of it too, having a good support group.
Right.
That pushed me a lot to like, okay, yeah, like these guys got my back. You know, I'm going to do everything I can to, you know, prove it to them that, you know, I'm still going to go pro no matter what.
Right.
So, and luckily I did. So
brilliant. I mean, did your family like push you when you were growing up, or was your soccer career always self-motivated?
So, I think this is like and it's not a controversial topic, but it can be, right? I think that, and again, you've been in club for years, like you've been in the game, so you see it as much as probably I do. Some parents nowadays are so tough on their kids. And this is like, my dad was tough on me too, but and I give my dad a lot of credit, both my mom and my dad, because they knew the fine line in terms of like pushing me to do something and then just me wanting to do it myself. They never pushed me to play soccer. My dad was a great player. My older brother was an amazing player, but they never pushed us to play soccer. You know what I mean? They would like, okay, yeah, we're going to put you in, youth soccer, how every parent does. But they were never forcing me to go onto the field. They were never forcing me to do the extra work, because they were like, if you want it, you'll do it yourself. And I see a lot of parents nowadays that like, they'll put their kids to do extra sessions, or they'll push their kids to go play with this team that the kids don't want to. And it just takes the joy out of it. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, like, you have to enjoy the sport to become better at it. And again, you've seen it. Like, if the kid isn't having fun, they're not going to develop, and they're not going to want to play anymore. You know what I mean? And I see it so much nowadays, and I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, wow, like, what are you, like, you guys are messing up. Obviously, each parent is able to, they can do their own thing, right? You know what I mean? But I was lucky enough to have parents where never pushed me to do anything. My dad would be like, hey, do you want to go kick in the backyard? And I'd be like, yeah, that sounds fun. Like, let's go. But he was never like, hey, we have to go kick the ball in the backyard, or we have to go do this. He was never demanding it on me. You know what I mean? And I gave him a ton of credit, because he comes from a country where in Uruguay, soccer is the only thing that they know. So of course he wanted me to go play soccer and go make it at the highest level, but he never forced me to do it, which I think was incredibly important for me. You know what I mean?
I think for everybody, dude, that's a universal truth.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, you're right. I see some kids, I see it in their eyes, like they're looking for an out.
Yeah, and it's crazy.
They're looking for an out, 12, bro. 13 years old. They are like, if their mom or dad came to them one day and said, you know what, like, you don't have to play anymore, they'd be like, oh, thank God. You know what I mean? Yeah. I swear, it's crazy, dude. It'd be like, but you're right, dude. The best players that I know, like the best players that I've coached, those parents are like involved to the extent of they are extremely committed to getting their kid to practice because they want to go.
Yeah.
Or they want to do the extra training. So they're extremely committed. Like that parent will miss dinner with the family to take that kid to something. But they're not, like you said, they're not making that kid do that, but they're committed to getting their kid there. Yeah. I think that goes a really, really long way.
Oh, it does.
It
does. Like, even my situation growing up with the Red Bulls, to go to training, we were training 3 or 4 times a week, and the training facility was an hour and 20 minutes from my house. Yeah, it was far. So it was commitment, not only on me, obviously, right? Because I would go home from school, do a little bit of homework, get a little snack, and then go to training. But it was for my parents. So like I always say, like, when I first debuted, I called my parents and I was like, that was for you, because of the commitment that they did for me. Like, to work jobs, to have full-time jobs, and 2 other kids in my household. I had an older brother and a younger brother, and for each of them to drive me to practice 3 or 4 times a week, an hour and a half away, hour 20 minutes away, that's tough. That's tough, and that's commitment. That's dedication to me. And I always say, like, everything that I've done within my career, it's all tribute to them. You know what I mean?
That's brilliant, dude. I bet there's so many similar stories too.
Oh, 100%.
Like, at that level, it's like, man, I was listening to a podcast with Scott McTominay, very similar to you. He's like, when I think about my childhood, I think about they had to drive like an hour and a half to and from Manchester United Academy training. And he's like, when I think about my childhood, the best times were just in the car with my dad for that hour listening to music there and back. And he's like, and so like it was enjoyable. He's like, we never talked about soccer once. Yeah. We just listened to music and chilled. And I was like, yo, like, that's a common thread. That's a universal theme. Like, it is. It's very much like that parent is incredibly committed to getting that very talented kid there. but that very talented kid is just committed to playing the game. Like it's there. They want to go.
Yeah.
You can't convince a kid to 4 days a week want to go to training unless they want to go.
Yeah, you can't. Especially when it's an hour plus away. Dude. You know what I mean? Like at a kid's standpoint, when you're 14, 15 years old and you're in these higher academies, like you're missing a lot of weekends due to games and travel and all that stuff. You know, I can't even tell you the amount of birthdays that I've missed and you know, graduation parties I missed. I missed my 8th grade graduation going into high school because I was with the U.S. national team.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's a moment that you want to celebrate with your friends. You know, that's a big stepping stone as a kid, but I wasn't there.
Right.
But you know, it's funny. Like I didn't care that I wasn't there.
Right. When you're crossing that line, that white line in your first professional game, what is the first thought that crosses your mind?
It's a little bit surreal. You know what I mean? Because you start to look back at it and, you know, you're still young, but you look back and you're like, wow, like this is actually happening. Like you start to get flashbacks of when you're 12 or 9 or 13, 14, and you're like, damn, like I remember when I was training in the park here with my brothers, and now I'm here. You know what I mean? Now I'm on TV, and it's a little surreal. Like it's an emotional moment as well, because you're like, you know, I did my goal. This is my goal, and I've achieved it. But you know, you also have to come back to reality a little bit. Like, yeah, I'm here, but like, where can I go now, or how far can I go within this game? You know what I mean? But in that moment when you're crossing that line, you're getting subbed in to make your pro debut, it's pretty surreal, to be honest, dude. It was a definitely top 2, top 3 moment of, you know, my life, not just soccer, just life in general.
Right.
You know,
looking back at that yourself at 12 and 13 years old, at that kid, what was it about that kid that you think is like the thread that brought you all the way through to that moment, on the fields and off the fields?
I think it was just my obsession with the game, you know, and I'm always very realistic. I've known you for a little bit, and I'm always very straightforward. And growing up, like, yeah, when I was 12, 13, you know, I'd probably say I was the best player on my club team, you know what I mean? But when you get into these academies, there's ballers, dude. You know what I mean? There's studs that they're going to be better than you. Like I had multiple teammates that were better than me, and I'm not afraid to admit it, but it's kind of funny. Like those players ended up not making it pro, and it was because I believe that I was just obsessed with the game at such a young age. Like I genuinely wanted to get better every single day. And I think that's what brought me over the line to make it as a pro athlete, because again, you could have all the talent in the world, right? But if you're not obsessed, like you won't make it. You genuinely have to be obsessed with the game.
Like talent won't get you through.
No, it won't. Again, you can be, and I've played against kids that, again, are 5 times the more player I was, and they never made it because I was just obsessed and always doing the extra work and all that, and that goes a long way. You know what I mean? So I think even at the young age of 13, 14 years old, I had an obsession with the game. You know, that like, okay, I knew that kid was better than me, but he wasn't going to outwork me. You know, and that brings you far.
Were you bringing that mentality into training like
every day?
Okay.
You have to.
You have to,
right? Like if you want to get better at your craft, and I think the most important part of it, even when you're like 20, 21, where at that age, you kind of know what kind of player you are, and you're kind of hitting the ceiling in terms of like, you can develop a little bit more, but not a lot. You know what I mean? You're that player. If you're the number 10, you're kind of stuck within that creative mindset role. Like, you know what I mean? So you don't develop much more when you're in your 20s, but that you have to have the mentality where like, okay, like I'm still going to go out and try to get better. Even if it's just a little bit, you still have to put in your head like, yeah, I'm still going to go do this and get better at it. Even though you know, like you can't develop much more as a player at that age. So I think that sets a lot of people apart too, especially when you're older, later teens, early 20s, you know, just to keep working, you know?
Yeah, 100%, dude. I mean, it's a common thread. It's a universal truth between all elite athletes, dude. Yeah. Is like, it's that obsession. It's that mental.
You have to have it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why that conversation comes where like with the parents, like you can push them as much as you want, but if the kid's not enjoying it, if they're not obsessed with the game, they're not going to get that far.
Right. What was your number one sport in your home?
Soccer.
Right.
100%. Yeah. Both my parents are from Uruguay, and
it's a religion there, dude. Bro.
Dude, I got to play there for a year. It's legit. It's life or death over there when it comes to soccer.
Yeah.
And I think going overseas helped me out a lot too, because the American player doesn't realize that. You know what I mean? And that's why I think we're so far behind in terms of when it comes to the national team and all that stuff. Like, we're so far behind because these other countries, like, it is life or death at the age of 13, 14. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're either playing soccer or you go get a job. Yeah. And almost everybody wants to go play soccer. So you're battling with hundreds of players within these countries to go pro.
Right.
And I think the U.S. is a little different. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you have the college, and then you can, get a job over like in a corporate world or whatever. They don't have that in these third world countries. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's why, we're so far behind when it comes to the national team and all that stuff. Like, we have so much growing to do within players developing and all that, because, you can have a plan B or C or D in the U.S., where in other countries like Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, they don't have plan C's and B's and all that stuff. They have one plan.
Also, plan B is not like an accessible, like, how accessible is plan B in America, bro?
Right.
If I wanted to, like, right now eject from what I'm doing and find a job making a decent living, I 100% could. Yeah. And then if I didn't like that, I could probably find a plan C.
Yeah.
And it would be accessible.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I get it. Like, my wife is Brazilian. I spent a lot of time in Brazil. Like, soccer is an absolute, like you said, it's life or death down there.
It's a lifestyle there.
It's a lifestyle. It's everything. And it's plan A, B, and C, and D. And if you don't make it there, like, nobody knows what they're going to do after that. That's why so many people fall into,
bad habits and bad situations and all that. Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree.
That probably, having soccer as the number one sport at home is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Not a lot of kids get that. I think that, that like kind of works against a lot of kids that I think that have a lot of talent that I've coached is they have like just bucket loads of natural talent, but they go home and like football's on the TV and, or baseball's on the TV.
Yeah.
And mom and dad really like, they love baseball. And so even if that kid has like just the amount of like the same amount of potential as kid A in Brazil or kid B in Uruguay, over time, like the environment isn't conducive, right? Because it's just like, it's just not part of that subconscious, and that's like you said about like what's going on with U.S. soccer. I think you can't fake history.
No.
And you can't just implement 150 years of history and culture like overnight.
Yeah.
And so it only makes sense that we still need to build the history. Yeah. And that's why I think that like I'm committed to coaching and doing this podcast and talking to people like you, is because we have to start creating the culture and the history now, like so that 20 years from now, like it's still like we're still creating it. So that way, maybe the kids that are 2016s and whatever U8 now can like in 10 years have more of a culture.
Yeah.
Because right now it's like, who knows what's going to happen? We have so much talent, dude.
I do. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm not from Arizona, right? So I moved here a couple of years ago, but seeing the talent that's out here in AZ is crazy. The talent pool here is insane. You know what I mean? And mind you, I've played overseas. I got to play in different states in the U.S. professionally, and the talent pool in AZ is wild, dude.
Wild. I totally agree.
Crazy.
Yes, bro. I'm with you, bro. I've been overseas. I've seen, Spain and France. France is a different beast. Every country has their little thing. Yeah. Like France has they have a lot of like Africans that are just like ridiculous, like the Algerians, the Nigerians,
talent, raw speed. It's crazy.
Power, bro. Yeah. And then the Spanish, it's a religion, so it's like you can't really tactically. It's hard to compete with them. They're just a step ahead of you. Yeah. But like technically, there's no difference between the players here and the players there at U13, U14. Yeah. There is some sort of gap, I think, like once you get to U16, 17, and 18, I don't know what happens, but like the kids that were just as good as the Spanish kids at U13 somehow are like 20% behind the kids in Spain at U18.
I don't know
what is that, dude?
Dude, no idea.
I can't figure it out.
Me either. It's crazy.
There's like some like
such a big drop.
Leap. Yeah, there's a big. It's either a drop here or a leap there.
Yeah.
I can't. I think maybe it's high school soccer. Like I don't really know.
It could be, and it could be just like the U.S. soccer system in general, maybe. Because I mean, I haven't looked at other countries and their systems and the way they bring up their kids when they get 16, 17. But I would agree, like at that age, there's such a big gap between like a Spanish national team and then a U.S. national team.
Yeah.
But it's crazy because the 2 or 3 years before, they're the same. They're eye to eye.
Yeah.
But the older they get, you just see them increasing a little bit more, and it's just like, how?
I had a thought. Maybe this is it. I think that we don't break down our training we don't compartmentalize our training enough. So, for instance, if you were to break down your film and figure out exactly where you're going wrong the most, and let's just say you broke it down to passing, final third, physical, whatever. So that means you break down your film and you go, all of my mistakes are coming from a bad first touch. And then you could go into either go do it by yourself, or you've determined that I can't do this first touch training by myself. I need a pro to come in and help me work on my first touch with technique, the right type of situational training, and go, we are going to only work on my first touch.
Yeah.
Like, I think that there's a lot of like blanket training and general training, and there's not enough like knowledge and foresight into going, my problems are in the final third.
Yeah.
I can't get my shots off. I'm winding up on my shots. They're all getting blocked. My final touch, my final touch isn't good enough to create my own shot.
Yeah.
All my shots are skying, whatever it is, right? I'm missing all of my passes over 10 yards.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that anybody's really breaking that down.
I don't think so either, dude. And you know, it's funny, again, I didn't really have that growing up either. Like, never, I mean, I worked on certain things with my dad. Like, my dad would watch me on the sidelines, be like, okay, you got to work on this. But other than that, like, I really never really had somebody like, okay, breaking specific things down until I got to obviously when you get to the pro level, you have assistant coaches and video guys that, okay, you're losing the ball here 25% of the time. But I think you need that more when you're growing up instead of when you're at the pro level. At the pro level, obviously, because you need it, right? But you're more aware of it at that point.
Because your livelihood depends on it.
Exactly. But when you're 15, 16, and like you said, like, oh, I'm not getting my shot off on time, or I'm winding up here, why am I not doing this? You don't have, again, I could be wrong, but there aren't a lot of clubs or coaches that are doing that. You know what I mean? And I think that's incredibly important for development as well. You know, like if you were my coach and you call me and, hey, Alex, come in, you know, I'm 15, 16 years old, and you're showing me clips, you know, of a consistent bad touch when the ball's into my right foot. I'm immediately thinking, okay, I got to work on it. But that's not happening.
Right. And not only like I need to work on it, but like, how do I work on that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, how do I work on that?
Yeah.
Because
or who can I get to work on that with me? You know,
that's right. Is it something that I can work on myself? I think that's another thing is, what are the types of things that I can work on alone, and what are the types of things that I need to bring in somebody?
Yeah.
What are the types of things that I can fix over time at team training? I look at team training almost like an index fund. You know, you just put some money, and then over the course of 10, 15 years, you'll get like, you know, 10, you know, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then I look at like individual training is like buying an individual stock. Like if you put a lot of money, like you could over the course of a year make freaking 50% on your on the money that you put in or the time that you put in. But that individual training needs to be more intentional, and both of us work on that. Kids between like 10 and 18 years old. And I've been thinking about that a lot recently, where I'm like, you know, I would love if somebody, before I worked with a kid, somebody came in, sent me some clips of that kid or some game film and went, I want you to figure out exactly what we need to work on.
Yeah.
exactly. Is it first touch? Is it weak foot? Is it shooting? Is it all of it? And then we need to slowly do every single one of them. But like, I think that you should always, what is the biggest glaring thing? Work on that first.
Yeah.
And then, you know, because working at AZ Soccer Lab, first of all, what a gift, dude. That place is the shit.
I've been there about a year and a half, and I love it.
Yeah, they get it,
the
bro.
best, dude.
They freaking get it. Yeah. I'm so thankful that they exist.
Yeah.
You walk in, there's a coach's lounge. There's snacks. There's energy drinks. There's water. There's no other place like this.
It's the spot to be.
It's the spot to be, bro. I mean? Yes.
And I've told Phil and Jordan a ton of times. Obviously, Phil and Jordan, the owners, but I tell them like this is a spot to work. Like you know what I mean. Like I love the job that I do.
Yeah.
You know, they just make it. The environment is just so fun to be in. And, you know, I love it there. So great spot for sure.
Great spot. And so, but I would love like if, and I think like, you know, I would love if we could go in there and we can figure it out, like, which I love. But I think also it would be cool if players had a little bit more dedication to their own career to the point where they're like, Alex, my weak foot is shit.
Yeah.
Like I only want to work on weak foot today.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to suck ass, you know,
and it's going to look bad,
but it's going to look really bad. But like, I want to go all in on my weak foot, dude, you know? Because dude, the one thing that's a pretty common thread I've noticed, like everyone can shoot.
Yeah. Especially when you're within like 10 to 15 yards.
Everyone can shoot, bro.
Yeah.
But not everyone has a weak foot.
No.
A lot of trampoline touches, dude. First touches are not great. First step is not great.
Yeah.
Like explosive first couple steps.
Yeah.
Not great.
Yeah.
I would actually say that probably the biggest difference between American and Spanish players is Spanish players' first touch always go exactly where the space is.
It's crazy.
It leads to the next thing in like a very intelligent way. Whereas like American players, first touch at your feet, or you like lose it off your first touch. No offense, that's true.
Yeah.
But first touch at your feet, look up, then I decide what I'm gonna do. Bro, the best player's already gone, dude.
Yeah.
They're gone.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and I think the most important thing in soccer is your first touch. If you don't have a first touch, your game is you're slow when you get to a higher level, and you can't play when you get to 17, 18 years old and you're playing against these Spanish kids or whatever, or South Americans, and their first touch is, like you said, into the space and they're gone. Whereas to here, it's like, oh, you want to hold it, look up, then you can turn. Dude, you don't have that much time in the game.
right.
You know, especially if you're a 6, 8, 10, if you don't have an idea before you get the ball, and if your first touch is like, let's be real shit, you're screwed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're screwed on a grassroots level, not, let alone an academy or college or anything like that. Like, yeah, for sure. Because, dude, I mean, everyone that's on a soccer field can run.
Yeah.
You know?
That's like the basic part of soccer. You got to run.
That's right. So everyone can run. So how do you differentiate yourself? Like, I think you're right. I think first touch is the big one. That's if you really want to if you're like, so if you're a kid and you're thinking like, how do I get better? I would say go all in on your first touch. Yeah, go all in on that.
You have to.
Yeah.
And then you work on the rest. But again, if you have a crappy first touch, sorry, dude, you won't play.
Yeah. And what about like, so as a striker, I played wing.
Okay.
And so
what kind of winger were you, like going at players?
Yeah, I was fast.
Yeah.
So I was like never really I just wanted to like beat my guy and get an assist or a goal.
Yeah.
But I realized like very early on that was like nobody cares if you're like a winger that's great in possession.
No.
Like nobody cares, dude.
No.
Like if you're not like beating your man, getting on the score sheet or getting assists,
you're not doing your job.
You're just not you're not doing your job. It's very similar with the striker, right? It's like if you're not scoring goals as a striker, it doesn't matter how good you are, like in, passing the ball around, like if you're a striker, they're expecting you to score goals, right?
Yeah.
So as a striker, like what kind of striker were you? And, also as you were going through, was it, you were getting on the score sheet a lot, I'm guessing, to get picked up by Red Bulls.
Yeah.
And then, when you were in college and pro, like, were they expecting you at goals every game? Like, what is the expectation as a striker?
So when you're younger, yeah. Like when you're younger, the age is 13 to like 15, 16, you have to get on the score sheet because that's how you get seen at the end of the day. If you're playing in a high level game in an academy level and you're scoring 2-3 goals, people are going to start hearing, okay, you know, Eric had 3 goals as a striker. Okay, next game, another 2 goals. Oh, okay. Maybe let's bring him into the first team, see what he's got. That's how you kind of get there, right? When I got to college, it was a little bit different because college soccer is tough. Like I said, it's more direct and you're not getting a lot of chances in college unless you're like at a high end, like a Wake Forest or something like that, where you're maybe getting 4 or 5 chances a game as a striker. But at other colleges, dude, you're maybe getting 2 a game. And the expectation might be different for every club or coach or whatever, or college that you're at, sorry. But my coach is like, if you get your chances, you got to put one away. That's how it works. Because, again, he came up through in a system where he knows what it takes to make it to the next level. And if you want to get to the next level, you have to be a killer. Especially as a number 9, dude. Like, you have to finish your chances as a number 9. Because if not, you won't make it to the next level. You won't get game time, anything. Because they're going to be like, okay, yeah, he can hold the ball up well. He connects with the midfielders good. He's in good spots. But if you're not scoring, dude, who cares?
Right.
Who cares? The number 9's job is to put the ball in the back of the net.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I've had games where I've sucked for 80 minutes of the game. I'd be terrible.
Right.
85th minute comes and I score.
Hero.
Good job.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, MVP.
Right.
Good job. You're going to start next game. You know what I mean? You get the bonuses and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's the life of a number 9.
Yeah.
And especially when you get to the higher level either within the academy or at the first team level, that it's the same expectations. As a number 9, you have to be a killer in front of the net, because if not, next guy up.
Right.
You know
I mean, dude, I'm a Liverpool fan, so Mo Salah, I'm
a huge Liverpool fan.
Yeah, so we know he's a scruffy shit player for like 90% of the games most of the time, and then he'll score some magnificent goal, and then he's the hero. Yeah.
And he's the guy who gets paid the big bucks, and
that's
he wins Player of the Year. But, you know, at the end of the day, that's his job.
Yeah.
You know, he could have a shit game for 75 minutes of the 90, and he'll still, within those last 10 minutes, get you a goal and assist.
Yeah.
And he's done his job.
That's right. You got to do your job.
You have to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what it takes to kind of make it to the next level, right? You, like, again, as a number 9, you have to be a killer.
Right.
Because if you don't have that mentality, like, it'll be tough to make it. You know what I mean? As a winger, you were probably like, okay, if I don't beat my man on these one-on-ones and get an assist or maybe cut in and get a goal,
you're going to get subbed out at the 65th minute, and you're going to be, totally. You're out, dude. You're not starting the next game.
No.
You got to be exciting, too, I think. You got to have a little bit of, like, an entertainment factor.
You have to have, like, a little flair to
a little
you
bit,
and all that stuff.
That's right.
You know, and, again, like I said, like, as a winger, you have to do your job. With 65 minutes, you're out. If you're consistently getting locked up by that right back or left back,
right,
next guy up.
Yeah.
You know,
I told my players last season, I said, the way that you're going to make it to the next level is you either need to score goals, stop goals, create goals, or control the game. Mm-hmm. Those are I was like, the rest of it, I don't care. That's how you affect in a game.
Yeah.
How you affect a game. If you are a striker, you're going to score goals. If you're a winger, you got to score goals and create goals. Mm-hmm. If you're a center midfielder, you're either going to create goals or you're going to control the game. Yeah. And if you're a center back, you got to win your headers, you got to stop goals, you got to die on your shield. Mm-hmm. Like, you're the dude that's going to have, like, a tooth missing. You know what I mean? And if, like, you know what I mean? Like, you just got to be like, you got to be like that, dude. Yeah. You just got to be like that. If you're not doing any of those things, then all the other stuff to me doesn't matter. Just affect the game. Yeah. Just do your job and affect the game. Yeah. And then the rest will come to you.
I agree.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes it. You're right. In all 4 aspects of those, you're right. Like, you have to, like I always say, you have to win your individual battles, and you just have to perform at your position. Like you said, if you're a forward, you got to score.
Yeah.
If you're a defender, don't let them score. You know what I mean? And it sounds simple. Obviously, it's a hard job to do, but in reality, that's what it takes, and that's what you have to do to develop as a player and perform at a high level. You have to do those things.
Yeah.
Because if you're not, then again, next guy up, and it's a cutthroat industry. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more, like how cutthroat it is? Like,
so It's funny, right? You grow up and you know, you want to go pro, and you think that going pro is like the best lifestyle in the world and all that stuff. And even before the pros, like if you're at a high end academy, it's so cutthroat in terms of what I mean by that is, to them, you're just when you get to that level, you're just another number. You know what I mean? And if you're not performing, you get fired, like you get cut. Like that's how it is. And it's a very cutthroat industry in terms of like, if you get injured, you could be a starter for the first 5-6 games. You get injured and you miss 2 weeks. The guy who comes in after you scores 2-3 goals, you might not see the field for the rest of the season. It's very cutthroat. And I know from experience that's happened to me. You know what I mean? So I know what that situations are like, and it sucks. You know, I've been on both ends. I've also come off the bench and won my spot on a position, but I've also been the starter where, you know, I got hurt, I didn't perform for a game or two, and I didn't see the field for like a month. But that's just how it is. It's insanely cutthroat. That's where I go back to the fact that, like, you have to be mentally strong within this game, because if you're not, if you're mentally weak in situations like that, where if I'm a winger, right, and I'm starting the first 3-4 games, and Eric comes in, you know, I maybe tweak my ankle and I'm out for like a game. You come in, you get a goal and assist. You start the next game. Next game, you put in a solid 70-minute shift. You get another assist. Who's going to keep playing? You. You know what I mean? And I go from the starter being one of the best players on the team to a bench player. But that's just the reality of the fact. Like, it's a very cutthroat industry, and in terms of like, coaches don't care. GMs don't care. Like, if you're not performing, you will get cut at the end of the year. Your contract will expire and they will not re-sign you. You know, and that's just the reality of the business of it.
And that's even at the academy level too.
Yep.
And if you're not there, and this is like a message that I want to send to those players like that want to be there, if you're not there with those stakes, then you're not at the highest level.
No.
If your job is not threatened to being taken,
yeah,
you're not at the highest level.
Yeah. And I agree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's weird, like some people or some players are probably like, oh, like, or parents, they're like, oh, they're only 17 though. Well, 17, that's when it gets to that cutthroat industry where you're like, you're going to make it or you're not going to make it. You know what I mean? And if you're not in those environments, like you said, where you don't feel the pressure from the guy behind you,
yeah,
that's not the right place to be.
That's right. I want these kids to understand that so much. Like, the parents want their kids to feel safe. They don't want they don't want competition in their position. And I'm like, you are setting them up for failure.
100%.
Because it's like that at every level. Mm-hmm. It's like that at every single level. If you're at the top, you're going to feel the heat.
Oh,
you're going to feel somebody breathing down your neck. Even I can even say, like, at a coaching level, if you're coaching at the highest level.
So that was going to be my question to you. Do you feel that, or did you feel that at a coaching level?
Oh yeah, there's 2 or 3 guys that are like right behind you, and there's a couple owners that think that the other guy should have the job, and you got to win every game. And like every time you lose, you feel the heat, and you're like, that other guy is probably looking really, really good right now for that job.
Yeah.
So you definitely, but I like that. because
it's fun. Right?
Yeah,
like
it's fun.
You enjoy that.
I enjoyed it, dude.
That's the fire that.
Yeah.
Like,
and I knew I was at the top.
Yeah.
I was like, I knew I was at a point where it mattered, because and I want to be in a place where it matters.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's what the highest level feels like.
Yeah.
You know, I never felt that as a player, but I have certainly felt it as a coach, and I like it. And I think that every player should strive to, if they want to be the best, put yourself in a situation where some guy is trying to take your job every day.
Yeah.
And don't allow your parents or anyone to think that it's not okay for you to have competition.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And like, some parents might like that info, and some parents don't, but at the end of the day, that's the truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And our job right now as, you know, coaches or personal trainers, like, you have to be very straightforward with these parents. Some parents might not like it. Some parents will like it, but you have to be truthful to these parents, and you have to say, like, hey, listen, your kid's going to be in an environment where if he doesn't perform for a game or two, he's on the bench. Again, some parents might run away from it and be like, oh, maybe this isn't the right spot for my kid. Maybe I bring him somewhere else. At the end of the day, you're not helping your kid if you do that.
Let your kid fight for the job, dude.
Let him fight for a job. Let him grind it out.
Yeah, let him grind it out, dude.
You know what I mean? Like, those are the environments that I'm doing now with my club. I've had this conversation with my parents that, you know, before, you know, they signed on for the next season. I've had these conversations where I was like, hey, listen, like, I don't know how things were run beforehand, but like, this is the way I run it. And like, I'm going to create a competitive environment. If it's not the best spot for you, no hard feelings, you know, like I won't be mad if you take your kid somewhere else, but this is the environment that I want to create, because I know, and you know, that's in order for them to develop and get to a better level, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
You have to be in an environment where you're getting pushed every day, where you know that if you don't have a good game, the next player is going to come in and take your spot.
Yeah.
Even at a young age.
Yeah.
You know, some parents could be like, oh, they're only, you know, 10 or 11. Who cares? The earlier you put them in that environment, the better they will be in the long run.
Why do you think Chelsea signs players at U8?
Yeah.
Those kids, when you talk to them at 11 years old, bro, they're like already talking to you like an adult.
Yeah.
They understand the consequences to not playing well.
It's crazy.
Bro, they're already like locked in.
But that's what it takes.
That's what it takes.
Like, that's where you want to be as a player. Like, as a coach, you said you loved it.
Yeah.
Right? You have to love it.
It's not for everybody.
No, and it's not. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Totally.
Too, right? Like, let's put that out there. There's nothing wrong with not being in that environment. But if you truly want your kid to develop and be in the best place, that's where they have to be.
And this is, I mean, I think we can both agree we're talking about elite level at this point, right?
Yeah.
Because we all know that there's a certain level where it's like, yeah, that's a fun activity.
Yeah.
It's a fun novelty and hobby. We're talking about like the 1%.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is the 1% is the ones that are self-motivated. You're not having to bother them to like work hard in training or anything like that. That level of player.
Yeah.
Like, even if they're a little bit scruffy in their technique, like, they're killers.
Yeah.
Mentality.
Yeah. And that 1%, it's hard to find too, though, right? Like, it's very tough to find those 1%ers where they want to do it themselves and they want to train every day and do the work every day. It's kind of hard to find those players.
Oh yeah.
You know, I've trained hundreds of kids, whether it was in Arizona or somewhere else, and I can maybe name 4 or 5 on my fingers that I'd be like, yeah, that kid wants it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's tough to find.
It is tough to find. I mean, also, but I think you got to get them young.
Yeah.
That's one thing with like the team I'll say that I coach, and they haven't done anything yet, so I do not want to pat them on the back, right? They're 13 years old. They've done nothing, okay? But I will say that like the coach that had them before, what he did brilliantly is that he found all the 1%ers in mentality before they had the technique and put them all on the same team, and they've committed to each other all the way through, which has been awesome.
Yeah. That's pretty sick. It's rare to find.
It's rare to find, dude. You know, like Zach, who's like the co-host here, we always talk about, he brought it up, a great point. He said 20 years ago, like, the best teams in Arizona would go beat the best teams in California all the time.
Yeah.
Now, the best teams in Arizona struggle to beat like the second teams in California, because it's been like also like watered down over time, you know? So it's interesting. Like, I think the key is, man, it's probably impossible to do now, but you got to try to just get all the 1%ers on the same team. Yeah. It's so hard because there's so many clubs, dude.
Yeah. So many clubs, there's so much competition within the clubs and all that stuff, but it's definitely a challenge to do that for sure.
Yeah.
But if you have 1 or 2, you know, maybe they bring another one and all that stuff. So I feel like it's like a trickle effect, but yeah, it's tough to get those.
There's no New York Red Bull Academy. There's no like clear academy where you go, that is the shining standard.
Yeah, I also think that's what Arizona's missing too. Like, they don't have that MLS club. Yeah, they have Rising in the USL Championship, but like, when you have an MLS backing, it's a different beast.
Right? Financially, you go to the stadium on the weekend, there's 40,000 people there. Yeah. It's like, that's where I want to go. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And you got to live that dream, bro.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That's sick, man.
It was pretty cool.
Hey.
I'm not going to lie.
I appreciate you, dude. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, this was fun. This was dope.
We'll do it again sometime,
yeah? We definitely have to.
All right, brother. Appreciate you, dude.
Appreciate you, dude.
Yep.